This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to Nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural Fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated T for Teen.
Welcome to Dear Prudence. I'm your guest, Prudence Anna Sale. I host the show Death, Sex, and Money at Slate. And today we'll be answering questions about unexpected jealousy, setting the record straight after a bad breakup, and how to make things work at a job after it took a long time to find one. Here to help me out today is JP Brammer. JP is a writer and illustrator originally from Oklahoma. He is the author of Hola Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot, and other life lessons. You also are an experienced advice giver, and you have been a guest on Death, Sex, and Money. For all these reasons, I'm excited to be with you again. Welcome to the show, JP.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to start telling people how to live. Your favorite thing.
Okay, let's start there. I want to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests. What is one piece of unsolicited advice that you would give to the world unprompted?
You know, I have never once regretted having some form of Tums on my person. You just never know. And if someone else needs Tums and you have them, you're like a god, like a guardian angel. It feels fantastic. There are chewable ones. They basically taste like candy. It'd be dessert for me even if there was no medicinal benefit to them. So yes, I'm not sponsored by Tums whatsoever, but I love having them.
Are you brand loyal? Does like a Pepto tablet work in the same way, or it's got to be Tums?
Okay, so in my brain, Tums is for like casual outings. Pepto means that I am dying. So I suppose like, I don't know what it is. Something about Pepto-Bismol feels very adult, very serious, very grave. And Tums feels like recreational. It feels like, I feel like a Tums right now. It's sort of like chewing gum to me. It's just like, yeah, it'll make my breath mintier. It'll soothe my tummy just a bit, is how I see Tums. It's the fun one.
Oh, the fun.
Yes.
Recreational stomach management.
It's just something to do.
I also feel like, I think we're about the same age, and I definitely was infused by commercials during game shows that Tums are basically a vitamin because they have calcium in them. Do you remember that ad campaign?
Yes, I sure do.
Recreational and good for us. Do you have any in arm's length right now?
I would love to lie and say yes. It's right over there. I think it'd be funny if I was just like a piñata, like just dispersing. Put Tums in your piñata for your quinceañera. There's my advice.
I'm hosting a 6-year-old birthday party this weekend. I might throw some Tums in the piñata.
Think about it. There's going to be some tummy aches at the birthday party. There always are, no matter how old you get.
Okay, that is great advice. And JP and I will dive into more of the things you need advice about after a short break.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states and situations.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Welcome back. You're listening to Dear Prudence. I'm Anna Sale, and I'm here with JP Brammer. Let's get started with our first letter titled, Just Want to Be a Good Kid.
I'm a teenager, and I've known I wasn't cis for years. Last year, I came out to my parents. My mom was an absolute wreck, which unnerved me so much I ended up taking it back. Recently, I've been trying to look more masculine. I finally felt like me. But my mom confessed to me that it overwhelms her when I wear boys' clothes. She didn't know who I was anymore, and compared me coming out and later taking it back to if she and my dad told me they were getting a divorce. The fact that my presentation upsets her so much terrifies me. She complains that I never talk about my identity with her, but whenever I try to, she cries, and I hate making her stressed. I'm an otherwise good kid, but somehow my presentation is debilitating for her mental state. I don't know what to do. How can I help her anguish about this?
Thanks for writing in. JP, do you want to start? What do you want to say to this writer?
Yeah, I was also a good kid for a very long time. And I remember being closeted in rural Oklahoma in my hometown. And I was just so keen on following the rules. I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school from like kindergarten to fifth grade where rules are taken very seriously. It's not just getting in trouble with the nun, you're also going to hell, etc. The stakes were quite high. And I would tell this person that, it's great that you are considering your mom's feelings, you don't like causing her anguish, but sometimes being a good kid does come at the expense of being who you are. And I think that maybe it isn't always a good thing to be a good kid. Sometimes you kind of just got to do you. And if that gets you in trouble with the nuns, then hey, you got to do it.
And I think I would go a step further to be like, let's think about what being a good kid means.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good kid doesn't mean being compliant always, or making sure you are loyal to whatever expectations your parents have projected onto you in the moment when you're upsetting your mom. I can tell it's really upsetting to you, and it doesn't feel like you're doing the right thing. But I kind of wonder, like, it sounds like a really interesting time for you where you're figuring out what feels good and who you are and how you want to present yourself to the world. And then when your mom responds, you kind of try to fold it back up. So I wonder, and I don't know, and you gauge whether you want to do this by yourself or with another trusted grown-up with you. But it sounds like, I wonder what would happen if you could say to your mom, I can really tell this is upsetting to you, and I want you to be proud of me. I really want you to be proud of me. And I also want you to understand me, and see if that opens up another avenue in the conversation. Because I think it sounds like she's gotten overwhelmed with how this is like more than she knows how to take in this moment. And saying that thing about the divorce sounds like her sort of saying that, like, can you imagine if I upset you in this way and then I took it back? That's not really a fair thing for her to say, like, you didn't say that to her to just upset her. You were trying to show her a part of yourself. And so I think maybe figuring out if there's a way at this time to have more of a conversation. There might not be. It sounds like your mom needs some help kind of dealing with this and not lashing out at you. But that doesn't need to be your job. If there's a way where she can find some other company or guide to help her through getting to know who her good kid is, even if it's someone she didn't expect or doesn't feel like she knows well enough to feel comfortable. Like, she needs some help taking in this information, and probably in the short term, it's going to mean that you're not always feeling totally aligned and close.
Kind of reminds me of this post that I read one time that was like, everyone who was a joy to have in class actually just had anxiety, where it's just sort of like there's so much of like compliance and going by the rules and being the quote unquote good kid that is just like not wanting to rock the boat or not wanting to put yourself in danger. And obviously for a young queer person, that's going to be amplified to the X degree. But I know that one thing I can say, per what you were saying about how there might not be an avenue where you try to make this conversation happen, maybe you don't arrive at a place of mutual understanding. I just remember being a teenager in my household and not really thinking about there being a potential future out there for me where I could eventually get out of my house and meet new people and sort of connect with the broader LGBTQ community. And so I would say, hey, in the worst case scenario, if for whatever reason you can't meet on the same page with your mom on this, just remember there's a community out there waiting for you, and you can connect with them in all sorts of ways. You know, the internet is there, but also you're not going to be a teenager forever, and you are going to be able to grow up, and you're also going to be able to make your own decisions and take control of your own life. And it's out there, it's ahead of you. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to make this conversation happen with your mom. That sounds like a great idea, and the way you put it was perfect. I'm just saying that if for some reason that doesn't go perfectly to plan, that's not the end of the conversation for you. There's still an entire world out there waiting to embrace you with open arms.
And I think as you're like waiting out there, and also maybe I would just kind of lift up your sort of eyes and look around and see if there's any grown-ups who might not be your parents, but who can provide support and just be a place where you can kind of work this out loud. You might have friends, there might be people on the internet, but I think it also really helps if there's a guidance counselor or a teacher or a Unitarian minister in town or something, like somebody who feels safe to just kind of like be a teenager who's working it out with. But again, I don't know the kind of community you live in and what would feel safe. And but you know, see if there are some other allies who are grown-ups around you who might help. Because it sounds like where you are right now with your mom, I can understand is really hard, and you're trying to figure out how to make it right. And it's something that you and your family are going to have to go through together. Okay. Our next question is titled, What to Do?
I've finally managed to escape a toxic and dangerous work environment that caused a lot of psychological and physical stress and harm to my overall well-being. I was offered a new job, and I am 2 weeks in. It is in the realm of what I want to be doing. My stressors aren't as great, and I don't fear working in an unsafe environment. However, the downside. I am struggling because I essentially feel as if I am a babysitter to the older residents who are residing here while receiving medical care. That is not part of the job description. They have aides, but they're just not always present in areas where I'm assigned, though they should be at all times due to the fall risks of some of the residents. Well, the inevitable happened. An unmonitored resident fell while I was leading a program. I felt awful, and making matters worse, the residents can't speak to answer questions. English is also not their first language. I spent this entire non-work day ruminating on what happened and if this is the place I should be working. I never received a reply or feedback from my supervisor after I messaged them. Any advice? Yes, I know looking for another workplace is a great solution, but it took me a year of aggressively looking before landing this job.
JP, what would you say to this letter writer?
I feel this so hard. I mean, you know, the stakes were maybe a bit lower, but I've worked in media where it feels like I will start working somewhere and then within the next couple of months there's a restructuring and everyone is let go, or like I have suddenly taken over three different jobs that used to be for three different people, but now it's just me. And so I'm doing like social media copy, I'm editing, I'm writing. It's like, what is going on here? And so there is a degree in our professional lives where we are at the behest of our employer, but also I think it's a really good idea to get in the practice of advocating for yourself and speaking really frankly to your supervisors and saying, hey, this isn't part of my job. I can't be doing this. And I think that this incident that they described here is a really good prompt to go forward and say, hey, this happened. Here's how it's making me feel. I would love to be able to prevent something like this from happening in the future, but I was busy leading this program, which, that's what their job is. Um, is there any way that we could work together to find a solution on this? Because, I care about these residents. It's just that I am stretched too thin. I'm not able to provide the level of care that I'm being expected to. So opening up that channel of conversation, I don't know what the workplace specifically looks like, but yeah, frame it as mutually beneficial. Just say like, hey, there's a problem here. Let's fix it.
Yeah. This sounds so stressful. And like these are structural deficiencies in the system that you're working in, but they are falling at your feet as the one who sees the consequences. And that is such a stressful position to be in the workplace. I agree with you, JP. And I almost, before you sort of think of it for yourself as like, this is me standing up for myself at my new job, I think you're still in the grace period where you can kind of play dumb a little bit. I worked with someone once and I thought it was so brilliant. She was like, I'm new here and there's some things that I'm not understanding here. And she scheduled a meeting and she put like a list of questions about things that she noticed that were sort of implicit about our company culture. She was like, is this how it works? Or is this, can you explain how this works? Can you explain how this works? Can you explain how this works? And it was all in writing before this meeting. And it prompted out loud discussion about some of the things that were formal processes and some of the maybe unhealthy informal processes that had become a part of this particular workplace. So I sort of wonder about that. It's discouraging that you have already reached out to your manager and you didn't get any response. I think you start with your manager or maybe your manager's manager and say like, what am I, if there's a fall when I am trying to do a program, what is the alert system? What is the backup? How do we make sure that these residents are safe? And if you could kind of like, hey, I just want to make sure I totally am oriented to your processes. But if you put it in writing in an email, that also is a paper trail of them, like you signaling that you have noticed that some of the residents are being put in unsafe positions, and see if that changes the way that the conversation happens. It sounds like you're in some kind of a care facility where, chronically underfunded and understaffed. So there might not be any immediate quick resolutions to this. And JP, I have the other part about this that stuck out to me is they know this new job isn't what they were hoping for already. And then they spent a whole day where they weren't working, ruminating about it. Like when you've been in those frustrating jobs where what you thought was going to be your job became that job plus three more jobs. And like, how did you deal with the rumination and the ways that it can take over the rest of your life when you're trying not to be at work?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, it is so tough because the solution that you kind of want every time is like, I want a better job, and that will always be the case. You know what I mean? Like,
Get me out of here.
right. I have so rarely ever been at a job where I wasn't thinking like, wow, I wish I had a better job. I mean, there's always going to be some aspect of like, yeah, this, that, and the other could be better. But I think it's important in those scenarios to sort of think bigger picture. Just try to think, okay, me personally, I don't love working. I'm probably very similar to most people in that regard. But sort of figuring out like, okay, what are my responsibilities here? What are my obligations? Am I managing them well? Are they manageable? Like in this case, something is in the picture that feels kind of impossible to solve. And so that needs a resolution. And I think the ruminating is understandable, but kind of going back to what you said about this being a structural issue, I would remove any question of blaming yourself or feeling bad. I mean, you can't be everywhere all at once. And in general, good advice is to have a paper trail. Always get it in writing. Always make sure that you have something you can point to that says, hey, this was an issue. I brought it up. This was the response. It is disheartening that the manager didn't give one. But in terms of having a job, it's rarely productive to beat yourself up, and it's rarely productive to sit and stew and think like, what am I doing wrong here? I just don't. I've never had that be the case where I look back and I think like, yeah, I was so right to be hard on myself back then. It's so often just a structural issue.
Yeah. And maybe in the absence of I try to tell myself it's not very helpful to stew right now, Anna, so stop stewing. The only thing that stops me from stewing is if I schedule something else in its place. And so I would really think about scheduling fun, like hangouts with friends, just things during your off time that bring you joy, that are going to get you out of your work head. So maybe instead of like, let's go for a drink and talk about how things are going, like, don't do that. Go to a Zumba class or something with your friends. Go to a painting class.
Yeah,
do something that's not going to just like give you more opportunity to just kind of, I feel stuck. And
something that doesn't even
feeling.
let you think about work.
Yes, exactly. You're listening to Dear Prudence, and when we come back, we will be reading more of your letters. Stay with us.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, what the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass f- So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to Nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated T for Teen.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Welcome back to Dear Prudence. I'm Anna Sale, sitting in for Janae, and I'm here with our guest, JP Brammer, to answer your letters. The next one is titled Painting.
When I was in college, my parents sold my childhood home, and the new owners promptly tore it down to rebuild. It hit me pretty hard. My boyfriend at the time was an artist, and he was able to take a few of the family photos I had and do a sketch of the house and paint a watercolor. It was such a beautiful and touching gift that I still have it hanging over 20 years later. My parents are retiring, and my mom asked me if they could have the painting because they missed the old house. I vehemently said no. The picture was special to me, but they were welcome to use it as a base to commission their own picture. But now my husband is upset with me. He says my reaction to the painting is out of line with my attachment to my childhood home and must be rooted in lingering feelings for my old boyfriend. Then he asked what I would have done if we hadn't broken up in college, and would I have married this guy? I told him that wasn't fair at all. I did deeply love my college boyfriend, and I was devastated when he broke up over our long-distance separation. The reason I moved to the city where I met my husband was partly because I wanted to make a new start, but we met 5 years after I moved. I could have gotten hit by a car or moved to Japan in the meantime. I love my husband, and we've been married for a wonderful decade. I don't know where this is coming from. He's still friends with several of his exes, and we regularly play cards with one and her husband. I don't know what to do here. Counseling seems like overkill, but it isn't just about the painting. Please help.
What did you hear in there, JP?
So one thing that I really focused on and that I really love a lot is in the limitless possibilities of what the alternate reality might have held. It's either being hit by a car or moving to Japan.
I also highlighted that line. I'm like, what is happening there? Okay.
Those are the two paths carved in the yellow wood. It is being hit by a car or moving to Japan. Love that. I also love, as an advice columnist, that people still have couple drama even after a decade of being together. I mean, this is great news for me. I'll never run out of fuel for my enterprise here. I am also thinking, like, if she has told her husband that she's aware that this isn't just about the painting, I think that it maybe is worth it to sit your husband down and be like, look, I think we both know this is not about the painting. Can we talk about what's really going on here? And it sounds like something, I mean, I've never been in couples therapy, but it does seem like some counseling could be in order depending on how that conversation goes.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like this is the ultimate advice question where the power of symbols is creating a lot of interpersonal drama, both with the husband and then also I feel like with your relationship with your parents. I think that you vehemently declined their question, their request to see if they could have that painting in their new life phase. It was an interesting word choice, and it suggested to me that I think a lot of people, everybody in this scenario it's like struggling with ghosts, right? And what they mean. I feel like the parents are feeling wistful and thinking about this time of their life when they were raising their family, they're retiring, they're getting older. They thought of this painting as something that would be a meaningful thing for them to have in their house to sort of remember that time. For you, letter writer, them asking for that painting was totally out of line because they're the ones who sold the house and had it be torn down. And I think that what anger is there and what it's about, I think is worth kind of pausing on for you. Like, I know our childhood homes, they are really powerful symbols. I still have dreams about my childhood home all the time, even though my parents sold it at a similar life phase after I went to school. I had a dream the other night that they gave me my childhood home, and I was like excited for the first like 2/3 of the dream. And then right before I woke up, I started worrying about how I didn't have any use for a home in West Virginia and what was I going to do with this? So I think that could be something to sort of ask, like, what is it that you're longing for when you think about this childhood home? And I also think it's okay that it's also about the boyfriend. That sounds like it was a very loving gesture that he figured out how you could continue to feel close to your childhood home, and at a really key point in your early adulthood where you're figuring out your relationship to where you came from and where you're going. I think that it sounds like your husband is misinterpreting all those big feelings for being about you longing to be with another guy. And so you're just like miscommunicating here. And so I don't think it's about you proving that you meant to choose him, and it's fair for you to have thoughts about previous partners. But I would just, have a conversation, revisit that conversation maybe and say like, I don't think this was about the painting. Let's talk about it. And then I just have one sort of question. I just wonder if you could sit with the thought of like, it feels like everybody's being kind of grabby and scarcity minded and afraid of death in different ways in this story. And I wonder if the thing you can control is what you do. And like, what would it be like to sort of try to bring a little bit more tenderness and abundance to this scenario? Like, could you imagine saying, you know what, I've rethought it, parents. I'd love for you to have this painting hanging on your wall during this phase. Like, it really means a lot to me. Please make sure I get it back when they die. They're going to die someday. Like, it's, there's some way where you could share the painting and sort of spread the love, as opposed to everybody kind of clamping down and trying to make arguments for who's right here.
The whole thing really does feel like the subject of a really high quality piece of New Yorker fiction.
Yes.
Like all the little tender threads in it, and how everyone's fear of death and their own petty desires, and it's getting in the way of their tangible relationships with family and their loved ones and their spouses. It's like, whoa, yeah.
So much unsaid. I know, so much unsaid. And just kind of, is there a way to kind of clear the brush a little bit? Sounds like a beautiful painting. You also could take it to a high quality, like, replicator and give them a print of the watercolor.
That would be sweet. Yeah. Also,
there's ways around this.
That's just a good idea to make sure that that image stays in your life in some way. I mean, things happen to original pieces.
Yes. Thank you for writing in. We have another letter now. This one, similarly, about relationships. This one is called Not the Bad Guy.
A few months ago, I ended an over 5-year relationship. Since ending it, I've come to understand my ex as abusive and manipulative. She would do things like coerce me into sex, and she once yelled at me in a public park for being more attractive than her. I'm certain that it was unintentional and that she wasn't aware of the effect her behavior had, but it's still unacceptable. The issue, now that it's over, is that we had a number of friends together, many of whom didn't pick sides in the breakup. I haven't told any of these people, who are still separately friends with both of us, about the manipulation and abuse because I don't want to put them in a position of having to pick sides. But it's beginning to make me increasingly uneasy to know that they aren't aware of the harm she did to me, especially because I'm pretty sure that she thinks of me as having wronged her in the breakup. Should I tell them? How?
Should the letter writer tell them, JP?
I am trying to picture myself standing in a park and yelling at someone for being more attractive than me, and that just my goodness. At that point, how did we get here? I fully understand where the letter writer is coming from. I had a breakup with someone that really mistreated me, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and the whole time I was just simmering every time I saw their interactions, being like, well, if only they knew what actually happened there. And I do think it's worth it if the occasion comes up to pull a friend aside and just not necessarily say like, hey, you have to choose me or them, or like, oh, you know that they're a bad person, right? But just say how you feel and really try to say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with right now. These are my feelings on the subject. And if you are really good friends, you should feel comfortable having that kind of conversation and making sure that it's not about, wanting revenge or wanting to take out pent up emotions on this person, but really just trying to make sure it's rooted in this idea of maintaining healthy friendships with the people in your life. Then yeah, I think you should talk to them about it, but just make sure that it's not coming from a place of like poison,
Yeah, I think that's what I really keyed in on, that this 5-year relationship only ended a few months ago. And I think that the sentence, it's beginning to make me increasingly uneasy to know they aren't aware of the harm she did to me, especially because I'm pretty sure she thinks of me as having wronged her in the breakup. That sentence is a tell about, like, I need people to know that I was not the bad guy, and there is a bad guy in this situation. And I think any of us who've been through a breakup of a relationship that goes on for multiple years, they can get messy. They can get like, um, people say embarrassing, hurtful things. I don't mean to minimize. You use the word abuse, and if you feel like you were abused, it is good that you are moving on and getting out of this relationship and moving to a place where you feel like you can protect yourself and find more healthy relationships. I don't know that kind of pulling friends aside at this point though is going to get you out of the drama. It sounds like it's going to start another it could potentially start another round of like, everybody's litigating who was right or wrong in this particular breakup. And I don't think you want to put your friends in that position if they're trying to figure out how to go forward honorably with both of you. That said, I really I have such warm feelings for like the friends in my life who were with me during the first stages after breakups, who weren't connected to my ex at all, who I just could badmouth him
Mm-hmm.
all the time. You know what I mean? It was like a safe place to kind of figure out, what did I just go through? What do you think about this? And it was like a little bit cleaner because I wasn't messing with anybody else's relationships.
Yeah. You saying that really makes me think that it is so important to have different kinds of friends after breakup. I mean, we're talking about people who she has in common with her ex here. But I remember after my breakup, I had a lot of my gay male friends being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie. These things happen. It's complicated, etc." And then my lesbian friends were like, "Let's kill him."
And you need both.
You need both. You need to be able to
God
have
for the
both.
let's kill him friends.
Yes, like you need to have that person who is just like without any nuance whatsoever being like, "Oh my god, screw them, you're amazing." And you also need to have people who can bring you down to earth and remind you that things get messy, etc. And that all that's very true, but holding space for all those kinds of emotions after breakup I think is really important. And like you said, it's so raw still. And maybe just wait wait and see how you end up feeling about it, because the way you feel in the immediate aftermath of a breakup is not how you're going to always feel about it.
Yeah, and you might find there's also the risk that your friends that you have in common with your ex, they might not know what to say, and they might say the wrong thing that doesn't make you feel supported, and it
Mm-hmm.
might kind of harm that friendship forever going forward, because in that moment when you were like, this is how terrible it was and this is how it made me feel, and if you hear them somehow defending your ex, it's just going to can spoil that relationship too. Um I don't know, and I think it's kinda nice to figure out, like, I was married and divorced, and I still have friends who are friends in common with my ex, and it's nice to have friends who figured out how to be in both of our lives, like, years on, and I don't know, it's just these ways that I'm glad I didn't sort of push some of those friends to, like, make clearer to me who they were aligned with, it allows me to, like, touch back in with that time of my life without having to be close to my ex. So there's something to hanging on to those friendships where they knew you both.
I guess the only thing I would add is, like I really do, just like you did, kind of hone in on this abusive aspect of everything. And I think it's important to recognize that, as time goes on, we do tend to look back and reconfigure the way we see certain things. And so, like, it's okay to really question, like, was the treatment that I experienced with this person abusive? And it's okay for it to be kind of a question mark for a little bit. And with time, and you look back on it, it becomes easier to identify, yes, that was abuse, or okay, that was just, a messy person and in a relationship that wasn't going the way it should have. And there are layers to it. And so it is okay to not have all the answers to those things right away. And I think this person just needs a lot of time.
I think that's so right. I think the term abuse, it can be so big,
Hmm.
and that you feel like, is it or isn't, but sometimes to think of something as abusive, it helps you kind of step back from it and see like, oh my god, how did it get this far, and why was I treated this way? I shouldn't have
Hmm.
been treated this way. And then with time you might come to see it maybe with different words, which are like, wow, how did we create that terribly toxic and harmful dynamic together.
Exactly.
Or a little bit of both. These are not as big a word as it is. It's not a definitive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that point. Those are all the questions we have for this week. Let's end on something else that's not trying to talk about the definitions of abuse, JP.
Yeah, please.
What I want to know from you is something that you are doing that is really fun, whether in work or in your life right now, as inspiration for what this the letter writer about work can do to fill her time when she's not on the clock. What are you doing that's bringing you delight?
Yeah, so recently I have been thinking about the things that I used to do as a kid that I don't do anymore, and if I want to bring any of them back. And the
Ooh.
answer to that was I used to draw dragons all the time. Like, I spent so much of my time drawing dragons as a kid. It got me in huge trouble with the nuns at St. Mary's Catholic Elementary School. They were like, "Oh, you're drawing demons. What's wrong with you? This is going to make the Archbishop so sad when he sees it," because we often had our artwork put up on the wall, etc. And I didn't want to make the Archbishop sad, so I was kind of forced into doing it on my free time instead of during class hours. But I recently thought, what if I just started drawing dragons again, and let's just see what's changed since I was an elementary school kid. The answer is quite a lot. I'm better. You know how there's always that conversation about how, like, what would you tell your childhood self if you met them right now? Mine would be like, I'm so much better than you.
Your dragons suck.
I have developed skills that will frankly take you decades to acquire. So hang in there, kid. Yes, it is bringing me a lot of happiness just drawing for the sake of it, because I'm not really planning on doing anything with these dragons necessarily. But sometimes you make shapes to entertain yourself during the day, and it's wonderful.
Oh, I just love dragon drawing is back in your life. And I like that it's private. Where can people find the work that you are sharing with the world? Where can we find you these days?
Publicly, I am at JP Brammer on just about everything. You can find me on Substack. On Substack, the name is Ola Papi. And yes, I am on Blue Sky, Instagram. I'm still technically on X, etc. Find me there.
Cool. You can find me. I just deactivated my X.
Good for you.
But you can find me on Death, Sex, and Money, the Slate podcast. And I also have a Substack, annasale.substack.com. You should subscribe to both of ours. And if you need help getting along with partners, relatives, coworkers, and people in general, write to Prudie. Go to slate.com/Prudie. That's slate.com/PRUDIE. The Dear Prudence column publishes every Thursday. Dear Prudence was produced this week by Maura Currie and Vic Whitley-Berry with editorial help from Paula de Verona. Daisy Rosario is the senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's VP of audio. I am your guest, Prudence Anna Sale. That's all for this episode. But join us on today's episode of Prudie Plus, where we answer a question from a sister wondering how to help her family. You can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/Prudie Plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available for you to listen to right now. We'll see you there.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.